Alright, so this is going to be basically what happened with some unboxing and first impressions videos. I still have all of that footage, but I talk a lot, so I'm trying to consolidate that down a little bit. So here's kind of the first one. I don't know, let me know what you think and all that sort of stuff. But of course, it's going to feel a little bit out of date as I try to catch up here. But the first knife that I picked up for this video here is this guy here. If you were around and paying attention right when this came out, then you know exactly what this is. This is the Kershaw Launch 15. And this is the first in the Launch series, which, of course, is US-made switchblade sort of guys from Kershaw here. First one in MagnaCut blade steel, and I really got to say they did a good job with the heat treat on this. I struggled a heck of a lot to be able to get that 15-degree angle on there, which means they're probably following protocol, and it's in the the mid 60s as far as HRC, rather than I don't know, getting kind of lazy and still doing 59 to 61 or something like that on it. And it's pretty darn cool. It's trying to mimic some, Italian stiletto kind of things, except this quill would usually come down and this one would come up or something like that. Maybe the opposite way around. I don't quite remember, something like that. But in all actuality, I think it might detriment it a little bit, because that's always getting in the way. You have to go way over it, which you might not always want to do. You might want to have your thumb back there because you have all this handle real estate otherwise, and that's just not a super comfortable ramp. And if you did try to use it as a ramp, then this enormous knife ends up being a 3 to 3.5 finger knife for you. So it's a little unfortunate. I'm still happy to have it, but the knife, or the launch that ends up getting a lot more pocket time for me, is the Launch 6, which I don't have really right around here, but it's not really important for this. I do like the clip, though. Very, very, very tiny. Very deep carry. You might get just a little bit of a crown kind of peeking out of your pocket there, so not much of a muffin top of a knife peeking out there. So pretty darn hidden, and I do like that you can swap that clip to the other side there. The Micarta inlays on here, they have quite a bit of grip. That's great because the rest of the handles are aluminum, and they are very, very flush with that aluminum there. There does look to be a little bit of a panel gap up top here. I'll call it that as far as a car term or whatever is concerned. But it's still just perfectly flush. So that's all sorts of great. Because we have those micarta inlays. Oh, and a little tiny backspacer, by the way, as well. That's kind of cute. They don't really have much in the way of milling going on the inside to relieve weight. I actually prefer that because it doesn't affect the sound of the knife opening all that much. It sounds a little bit more solid rather than kind of an echoey chamber that you get when you have some weight relieving going on the inside here. But yeah, there we go. Those are kind of my thoughts on it. Plunge grind, kind of crap. You can see I've made a smile out of it. And this black wash, which is I think still a trademark term from Kershaw. Basically, they're coating of some sort, probably a DLC or a PVD of some sort, and then they tumble the darn thing afterwards for a nice working finish. Yeah. So let's go ahead and do a couple of specs, and I can move on. We got 3mm for the Bladestock. It looks a bit thicker to me than 3, but that's basically what I ended up measuring on it. Let's see. We got exactly 3 ounces for it, or 85 grams. And that's pretty great because it's got a 3.48-inch blade, or 88.4 millimeters. So this is definitely one of those ounce and inch benchmark things, if that's something that you absolutely look for on a knife. As far as the handle thickness, we got 0.48, just a little thinner than a Spyderco PM2. That'll be 12.1 millimeters overall. And looks like I paid about 150 for this. I think I got it from Blade HQ. I don't quite remember. But wherever it was, that's basically what their going rate on them is. Pretty interesting knife. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one here, which is the Miguron Moyarl. And whenever I see YARL or JARL, I usually think of, kind of one of those Norse, almost like a mayor or something like that. The ruler of a particular town or something like that. But maybe that's just Skyrim still peeking into my brain here. This is a pretty fantastic knife overall. We got a thumb hole deployment. Let's go ahead and do that. We have a very kind of a gradual drop point here. Nice slicey blade. This guy, just like the Kershaw, 3mm blade stock thickness on this guy, but nice tall, almost full flat grind going on there. Nice comfortable handle. You can go back here, or you can easily choke up if you really want to do that. And kind of because of the lazy way that it comes up there, I'm less likely to actually get my finger up into the blade path, even though this is what they call an overgrind for the finger choil there. But still pretty darn great. We still have a titanium milled pocket clip, and that is something that I'm kind of learning is a little important with these guys here. 14C 28N blade steel on this guy. Pretty darn good choice. Looks like I got mine for $43, so it's a pretty darn good deal. The action on it's super great. And of course, the reverse flick works out really, really nice as well. For whatever reason, I don't quite like this as much as the Pelora, but I am kind of learning that my Pelora's edge retention, even though it's also 14C 28N, not super great, and this one seems to hold its edge a little bit better. I mean, 14C is pretty difficult to mess up on the heat treat, but it seems like it's possible that mine kind of got the short end of the stick there, whereas this one ended up working out a little bit better. We have plenty of lock bar access, so that's all sorts of good there. The Miguron logo on here can actually twist a bit on you if you end up taking this guy apart, because it's not adhered on one side of the pivot. So if any of that Loctite or whatever that they put in there comes loose, and it's very easy, then this thing can end up getting a little wonky on you, if I remember right. I might just be talking crap, and that might have been another company like Petrified Fish. But either way, I don't know. It's something that's possible to happen. Do like that you can swap the clip on there. Also, really, really fantastic. Like I said, the ergonomics are great. I like that the liners aren't proud to try to create a sense of a contoured nature. That makes it much more uncomfortable for me to actually interface, especially on the top when I'm pushing down. This one doesn't do that. Really, really happy for that. Whereas that's something that the Valona did that was kind of unfortunate and made it actually kind of uncomfortable in the hand when I was trying to do a whole bunch of rope cut testing with it. Yeah, all sorts of good stuff there. So I got the blade stock thickness out of the way at 3mm. This is a 4.05 ounce knife, or 115 grams. And that is for a 3.19 inch blade. And then you're going to lose a bit of that for the finger choil. So you probably got about 3 inches of, or just maybe under 3 inches of actually a sharpened edge to work with there. That's going to be 80.9 millimeters. As far as handle thickness goes on this guy, 0.54, so a little bit thicker than half an inch there. That's going to be 14.6 millimeters. So a little on the thicker side, but like I said, the ergonomics really, really work on this guy. The next one we got up is another Miguron here, and this one is a bit different. This is a Takog, which really, or Takog, no H in there, even though I kind of pronounce it Takog, which That would kind of be interesting to have a tactical motorcycle, a little bit like they were in World War II. Anyway, I'm way off base here. So this one, very, very different knife here. We have straight back so that gives you a whole bunch of belly, but not very much access to that tip downward. You can pierce with it very, very good, and we can see it's incredibly reinforced for it, but for any of those EDC utility tasks, this might not be the knife for you. This one also kind of bucks the trend. It's got a really thick blade stock thickness for it at least. We got 3.65 millimeters going on here. Much thicker than the 3 millimeters that we got from the other one here. It's still 14C28N, so that's great. And we can kind of see that this has basically a saber grind going on there. So not a full flat grind. So already thicker geometry and then much thicker blade stock thickness. This one isn't the most slicey in the world. And then it does have a slight bit of hollow grindness going on to the edge there, but it's fairly darn slight. Like I have to actually play around with lights hitting it at different angles for me to actually see that. I can barely feel it. So, it does help out a little bit, but maybe not nearly as much if you're looking for it for an EDC kind of carry. We still do have nice access to the lock bar though, so that's great. Action on it's still pretty good. We can see we got this front flipper here that works out pretty well. Shoving your thumb over the top. You can also kind of do it from the front, but for me that usually requires me to give it that extra gumption, almost like I'm using it like a lighter, whereas that at the top, I don't really need to add any extra strength or anything like that. Again, no proud liners. Appreciate that. We have a G10 back spacer on this guy here. We do have a deepish carry standard steel pocket clip on this guy. And unfortunately, I don't really find it to be very comfortable. It makes it feel much thicker at the back of the hand there. And just hits basically every kind of hot spot that I could imagine if I'm really kind of using this for a little bit of what I imagine that it's actually used for. Kind of annoying. A little bit, but not much, actually goes away if you choke up top there. Plunge grind again, not super great on this one here, as they don't have that large finger choil cut in. So you can see I got a little bit of a smile going on there when I did my reprofile. It's kind of annoying. And then on the inside we can see we have a decent amount kind of skeletonized out on those liners there. So pretty interesting knife, very affordable, but maybe not my favorite for an EDC carry from Miguron here. So I covered basically all those specs. This one was cheaper. It was $36 instead of $43 that the Moyarl is. So, alrighty, that brings me on to the next one, and one that a couple of people went absolutely gaga over. This is a Civivi Sokoke. This is a Ray Laconico design, even though it doesn't have a little single channel going on there in the middle that he does on many knives. It is what it is. So let's go ahead and open them up. It looks like I got some tape residue and stuff like that going on there that I need to clean off. That's perfectly fine. It does hide a little bit in there, and that's thanks to the bead blast finish that Civivi ends up doing on a lot of their knives. Not actually my favorite. It's actually the worst as far as corrosion resistance can go for for a blade finish. Your satin finish, your stone wash, and even your polish actually do resist corrosion a little bit because these things have so many tiny pores and stuff like that in there. But I mean, still, with them using the steels that they are in this particular case, I want to say it's 14C as well. It's written somewhere, but they get really creative in hiding them. Check my notes here. Yeah, it is 14C28N. One of those cases where I think I would have rather had Nitro V on there. They kind of swap between them on their Civivi models. But they basically act about the same. They're both offshoots of AEBL, so they have basically the same kind of properties going on there. But I have a lot less Nitro V, so it's always nice to have something a little bit different in your collection there. So, yes. Like I said, a lot of people went gaga over this thing. And I'm a little bit more lukewarm on it. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of things that are really, really fantastic about it. I like the micarta on it. It's very fine linen kind of stuff. A bit like what Kaiser has used on stuff like the Hiccup and stuff like that in the past. Let's see. You can actually swap the pocket clip, so lefties can actually use this, which is great. It's got a, flipper or a front flipper that you can easily do the reach over for it. But I also do appreciate having a thumb stud there, and the thumb stud does hide behind the edge there. Really fantastic for trying to do some sharpenings and stuff like that. The plunge grind isn't terrible, but it does end basically right before the edge there. You can see maybe if I get super, super close, I maybe have just started a little bit of a smile there. And, yeah, I mean, the handle, quite comfortable. I do like that those jimpings from that front flipper stick up a bit. It does give my thumb just a little bit of kind of interaction with it if I'm way back here or something like that. And the problem is that I feel like I want to carry it much further up there where the jumping just isn't. So that's maybe something that is a personal opinion. I would like to have jumping go a little bit further up instead of relying on it basically being down there for it. And let's see, we got 3mm Bladestock, very, very samey for Civivi. That's kind of their go-to, and it's good Bladestock thickness. For whatever reason, and I have this thing, or at least had it before I ended up destroying a mountain of cardboard with it, a very, very wicked edge on here. And for whatever reason, this thing just doesn't feel incredibly sharp. I think it has to, at that point, come down to the blade geometry being maybe not the sliciest that Civivi has ever done, but it's, I don't know, it was enough after using it for that to kind of throw me off of being like, yes, this is one of the most amazing knives in history, and I'm not quite sure why. Like I said, the edges was perfectly fine. Tested it with my best tester, and everyone has to do that differently because it's a little bit manual, but judging with my own, it was sharper than most, as in under 100 grams. This thing was crazy sharp, but it really didn't feel like it when I was trying to muscle it through material, and that kind of turned me off to it a little bit. But there's a whole bunch of other things about it that are really great. I like the blade steel. I like the blade stock thickness. The ergonomics are great. I love having nested liners in there. And they're nice and skeletonized as well. The pocket clip works out pretty darn well. It is Civivi's kind of standard, so it does have a little bit of a back and forth wiggle there, which is a little unfortunate. But at least it's has more than one contact point, and it is countersunk into the material. So yeah, I'm a little bit more lukewarm on it after having used it than I have with some others. But there we go with that. The action on it's fairly decent. Sometimes their bead blast can affect that, and it seems to be the case with this one in particular. There you go. There's my thoughts there on the Civivi Sokoke by Ray Laconica. Next up isn't really a knife. It's this guy. It's half from Vosteed and half from Reylight, as we see here. Man, that font really reminds me of either Pizza Hut or Round Table Pizza from like the late 80s, early 90s. I'm not quite sure, but for whatever reason, it's evoking something from my childhood here. So, yes, this is a flashlight, and this one is a little bit different than most of them that they did. But because of that, it's an orange, and that was my only option. But let's go ahead and get into it. So this orange one here, for the LEDs, it's using 3 Cree, which is it's an American company. And they're called XPL highs. They are 6,000 K as far as the light temperatures. So they are a little bit on the cooler side, but this thing gets up to 3,000 lumens. It's a lot. And granted, you do have to turn it into turbo mode to actually get there, but it's a heck of a lot. A lot more than what all the other colors did, and they used different light or LEDs for them. They were Nietzsche 519As. They were 4,000 Kelvin, so a little bit warmer light. But they only got up to 1,800 lumens, and well, more is better, so that's the one that I grabbed on this guy here. And I'm not sad about that, but I will talk just a little tiny bit more about it. As far as the lens in the front here goes, it's using sapphire glass, just like the camera modules on iPhones from, geez, I don't know, maybe the 7 or the 8 or something like that. Very, very hard and scratch resistant. So that's all sorts of good. Yeah, we got the actuator kind of guy up here. Titanium pocket clip. Obviously, it's not fully molded or milled, but it is titanium. You can anodize that if you want. Good luck actually matching an orange anodization there, but there you go. And then you can kind of notice like all of these little notches going here. We got some up top here. And those are all designed if you really wanted to deck this thing out in little tritium vials. They are not impossible, but kind of a pain in the ass to be able to get a whole bunch of them here into the States, which is why, a lot of companies, TwoSun's done that on like the TS16 and stuff like that with the blade. They give you the option in case you want to try to go through the hassle of trying to import them or whatever. But hey, they're available if you want to light this up like Vietnam or whatever. You can just get all of them going there. You got, I don't know, a ton over there. You got 4 posts and then 3 on the top there. But yeah, this thing can be really complicated because you can program it. It's got I think technically 6 lighting modes or 6 different brightnesses. And then, it's got an SOS mode and a strobe or something like that going on there. I've basically stuck with the standard, which is push once for low. And then you can half push and it'll go to medium. And then you can go to bright. Or you can turn it on and then half push twice to go into turbo mode for that full 3,000 lumens, and it is crazy. However, like anything that gets really, really bright, this right here, especially around the lens area, gets really hot. So don't set that on something that's like fabric or other things that are kind of flammable. I have noticed that once I kind of set it and it rolled off onto something and noticed that, yeah, the fabric started smoldering. So you do have to be a little careful with that. Let's see. Will it shadow up on the... maybe if I cup it a little bit. I don't know. It does... it has a little gasket in there that surrounds the lights. That does glow in the dark green that the lights do actually activate on there. And I think technically the inner gasket does as well. But pretty interesting overall. And then we can pop this guy open. And inside we get kind of a funky battery. It's an 18350, not an 18650. That does keep it shorter, but it also does change the milliamps there. We got 1100, whereas you can get probably up to like 2600 or 3000 or something like that with an 18650. But you can recharge that guy right there with a USB-C, which is pretty good. I wouldn't have minded having a charging port on the outside, but that's going to hurt the waterproof settings, which is IPX7, by the way. So nice. It is splash proof, just like a whole bunch of phones and earbuds and stuff like that. But it is better than just having dust protection. So that's pretty darn good. I don't remember exactly how much I paid for it. I think it was $69 through the Kickstarter. I think they're still available on their site, but probably not with the Cree LEDs. So you might end up using the Nichia ones, which might end up suiting you better. You get some better battery life out of it, but obviously the turbo mode is going to be 1800 milliamps instead of lumens instead of 3000. But there you go with that. Pretty interesting. And then the last one I have up here on my list is this guy. It's a TwoSun, and it is one designed by David Chen, who started working with him rather recently. He's done work for some other knife makers, done a couple with Petrified Fish, and then some others that I don't quite remember. I'll just postulate and say maybe Shieldon and some other stuff like that. And it's got some things going for it, but unlike the 501 that I was throwing a whole bunch of praise on a little while ago, this one feels like basically anyone under them TwoSuns could end up making this. This could have been a Petrified Fish. This could have been maybe a Free Tiger or something like that, even though they basically license out their stuff to some other folks. This could have maybe been a Gonzo. Just all sorts of stuff. It is basically G10. In this case, it's black, and then we have a backspacer that kind of expands out there. That's green with a gigantic lanyard kind of lashings there. I do like what they did with the front little pivot area there. Makes it a little bit better for a pinch grip. And we do have nested liners, which I generally like. But the blade stock thickness, unlike the 501, this one is going a little bit thicker. It's 3.6, which is still a little thin for TwoSun, but still much thicker than really kind of makes it interesting as far as I'm concerned. And the ergonomics are okay. This is a very kind of a classic drop point kind of look to it, or I guess you could almost it's one of those you could look at it one way or the other and go, it's a drop point or a clip point. I don't know. To me, it looks a little more drop pointy, but you could technically call that a clip with it being kind of a straight there. A little bit more of what they wouldn't call a California clip, which would usually have that little bit of a curve there, like you would see from a lot more Bowie knives and stuff like that. But this one just interests me a lot less because it doesn't really have a whole lot of TwoSun's normal DNA in there. It just feels like a standard budget knife, like something that they would end up doing and collaborating with like Y-Start or something like that. Just not quite fantastic, and not quite like some of the budget models that they've done in the past with Wong and Night Morning, like the TS127 or something like that. The flipper tab sticks out very, very far, and it kind of needs to because of its proximity to the pivot collar, or the pivot in general, not the pivot collar. And you do have the that guy there, but the as you could probably hear, the detent is tuned for that flipper tab and nothing else. That detent is super crisp. You can hear it let go. Ka-tink. So it does a very, very good job with that flipper tab. But they could have probably lightened up on that, brought that flipper tab down a little bit, and then you could have easily had something that you could reverse flick as well, instead of something that kind of looks like you could, but is just not viable for most folks out there. And because the blade stock is a little bit thicker, you can kind of get to the blade. You do need to dig your fingernail in there, so it's not something I really worry about biting me if it's in my pocket. But still, maybe a little closer to the spine of the handle than I personally like. So yeah, overall, I kind of get a meh on this, but of course, I also spent meh prices. This was like I think I got it for about 40. Looks like around 42. I think I ended up paying for that guy. There are some others that are coming from this guy here, David Chen. Some of them look pretty interesting. One of them is using N690 for a blade steel, rather than, of course, the D2 that this is. I guess they're experimenting around a little bit with using some different stainless steels. Still nothing from the States, and I kind of understand that for import taxes and stuff like that. And N690 comes from Bowler, so they can get that as well as some of their M390. However, it's certainly possible that they're going to ditch M390 for using their YJ01-V1 steel, which is kind of an M390 offshoot using advanced spray forming technologies rather than full powder metallurgy, which is kind of the upgraded or more modern version of spray form steel, which was kind of invented in the 70s. But they've, of course, improved all of that and stuff like that. So, yeah, kind of interesting. But, all right, overall, those were all the knives that I wanted to cover there. And there was 5 knives and a flashlight. Shoot, this was still 30 minutes. But at least it was better than my unboxing that I would cover a couple and around that same time. So, alrighty. Yep, as always, I'm definitely welcome to feedback on any of this. If you still need me to speed it up, I can probably do some speed runs or something like that with them. But I do kind of want to still talk about the knives a little bit there, even though I'm not doing a full review on them. But alrighty, as always, I appreciate y'all for watching, and have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo.